Well, let's talk about the Dash franchise for a second. So, this is arguably one of the most valuable casual gaming franchises in history. Clearly, it makes a lot of sense to iterate on the concept and leverage the characters in World of Flow. But there have been some gamers who have expressed sort of a Dash fatigue. And I'm wondering, can you comment on that? Have you guys jumped the shark with the Dash franchise? How can you possibly extend this thing even further than you have?
Yeah. Um, There's so much to say about this. I'm trying to figure out the right way to start. I guess I would start with the premise of the question, I think misses a key point about what we're doing with Diner Dash. I think the premise of the question sort of implies that it's, I don't know, a movie series that sort of had its day and it's, done its sequels. And we don't look at Flow and Diner Dash quite that way. We think of it more as a sitcom or a television series with ongoing needs to have showrunners who run the show and who to have new seasons. And we've been, I think, I will say, brave in experimenting, which sometimes may feel like, I mean, it works both ways, right? If we aren't brave and don't experiment, then we get accused of being same old, same old. But when we experiment, we get accused of changing it up too much, or as you put it, jumping the shark. I would argue that Avenue Flow is a proof point, if you will, that we are neither resting on our laurels nor jumping the shark. Avenue Flow, I don't know if you know about this, but it was a third-person inventory-driven adventure game that takes place on the big day of Dinertown. It's Mr. Big's daughter's wedding, and the wedding rings are lost, and Flo has to go all over Dinertown to help Quinn find the wedding rings. And it was a great hit for us, where we're about to release a sequel, and it's not a time management game at all, yet it features these characters and these story worlds that we've invested so much time into building and defining and writing brand Bibles for. And Vinny, it was a risk. It wasn't necessarily embraced by the portals. It was new. We haven't seen third-person inventory-driven adventure games work in casual yet, and it took us, believing in and having passion for risk taking that enabled that. And so, as I think about that versus say a Hotel Dash, which was also a big hit for us, but was more in the sort of wheelhouse of more dash play or more time management play, I think it's a balance. I think that we are going to continue to experiment, and we're also going to continue. I mean, so long as customers are voting with their pocketbooks at buying games like Cooking Dash 3 or Diner Dash 5 or Hotel Dash, we're probably going to not stop making them, but we're also going to kind of try to keep perfecting the formula, being brave with the narrative, keeping things fresh, and trying new things. And, will all of our experiments work? Some will be more successful than others, but we do feel like we've got a deep fan base who wants more, and we want to both shepherd or police what's really great and beloved about it while figuring out ways to keep growing it and experimenting. And so, no, I don't think we're jumping the shark at all. And I think what we're seeing, again, is that video games are becoming different than sequels that just get put in there when the operating system upgrades and you need better graphics. These new sequels and spin-offs are more like television seasons. That keep you going with the characters and the story, and more like, frankly, sitcom television series. And I'll give one more sort of anecdote, which was a Diner Dash 5 came out earlier this year. It's a lot of Diner Dashes, right? And it was a very hard game to get right because we had to follow up Diner Dash Hometown Hero, which the fans out there remember had a lot of cool, robust features in it, including multiplayer and user-generated content, and you name it. It had just so much in it. And we wanted Diner Dash 5 to be gratifying and satisfying to the player, but also new and different and go in a different direction. And we took the time and the care to really hit the quality bar of fresh but familiar. It's hard to do. And, we blew up the diner in that game to get people engrossed in the notion that they could build their own diner, and by playing Diner Dash, they could rebuild their own a diner that was personalized and their customized sort of diner, and then play in it. These were new ideas that hadn't been tried before, but when you think about them, feel very natural for where that brand could go. And I don't think we're out of ideas for that. I think there's a lot more room to explore, and not just for the download games, but to explore how our brands like Diner Dash will work and continue to reinvent themselves and grow and experiment cross-platform. We've had just great time getting our Diner Dash games onto the iPhone platform, and of course, like I mentioned, we also are working in social games. So we have a lot of interesting products and cross both for the download or online business and cross-platform in the works.
Well, thank you for that thoughtful answer. You've convinced me. I will never accuse you of jumping the shark again, Kenny.
Thank you, Vinny.
You've been in games and interactive media for a long time. You have seen all the trends come and go that I've seen. Companies have risen and fallen. Tell us some things that over the years have remained true. What surprised you, and what did you see coming all those years ago?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't want to totally go down the rabbit hole of who could have seen Facebook coming and stuff like that, because I think it'll get really businessy. Although, that's part of my answer. Let me just think for 1 second about how I want to answer this. The first part of your question is sort of what's remained true. And I think certain things that I believe in remain true, that a game has to be fun first, that quality matters, that a good game will ultimately, and that taking pride in your work, empowering a team, having a focus on a team that collaborates to get something done, having strong vision up front, offering emotional engagement through narrative and characters in video games. All of these things to me still feel like important carry-throughs and arcs no matter how much changes. I think vehicle changes, but the focus on quality, fun, storytelling, coherent vision, empowered team, those things don't change for a formula for success.
Yet, if you look at the success of the Zyngas and the Playdums of the world, what you're seeing is an analytics-driven design process. Some people are sort of prophesizing the demise of the game designer and the creative role in game design. These things are arguably not even games in the way that you and I have understood games. I was hoping you could maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can. I'm trying to think about how I want to position it. First of all, I think that social games are really exciting, and frankly, I think unforeseen for a lot of people, leapfrogging of the casual revolution. So if the casual revolution was people like you and me, Vinny, going, hey, what do we love about single-player games? How can we get them to the mass market? I think social revolution, enabled by Facebook, mind you, was, hey, what about multiplayer games? How do we get those to the mass market? And let's look at, elements of World of Warcraft that work for, incredible engagement, and let's leverage the social graph that's already built into Facebook to create a very powerful mechanism to spread the word of interactive play to the mass market. And lo and behold, all the things we talked about in casual games worked much more resonantly in the context of a social graph, but they had to be different. If you look at a sort of traditional model of what a game makeup is, right, the center rung of a bullseye would be mechanics, and the outside rung would be aesthetics, and that center rung is sort of, I call it metastructure. I think someone like Mark LeBlanc would call it dynamics, but it's that sort of what happens between the mechanics and the aesthetics. And in a traditional video game, right, you start with mechanics. What's the play? As you kill goblins or frankly serve food in the diner, you level up and you add on to your metastructure. So in World of Warcraft, you get cool things for your character, and in Diner Dash, you get to rebuild part of the diner. But whatever it is a sort of metastructural dollhouse rung. And then the outer rung is whatever aesthetic choices you've made. I don't know, is it goblins and elves and dwarves, or is it diners and cartoons? And what I think is interesting about Facebook games and social games is that the early adopters, the folks who first kind of had the breakthroughs here, they substituted what we think of as rich mechanics and we think of as needed for basically social play. I mean, the center of a good Facebook game today is Facebook. It's people being able to play with each other in a light way. And frankly, the aesthetics on a lot of the early Facebook games were not what was emphasized, right? There was a lot of text-based RPGs, and so they didn't always look so good, and they didn't have a lot of story. But that middle rung, that dollhouse, is where they put all their energy, and the other two rungs of a traditional video game kind of atrophied. Mechanics and aesthetics kind of atrophied, while the center rung of metastructure was really where they put all their effort. So your dollhouse, your doll farm, your doll frontier, etc. And now I think what we're seeing is the emergence of or the need for a sort of growing out of its infancy, richer mechanics, more impressive and richer aesthetics and production values. And so I think, there has been this initial phase where, and by the way, it does need to absolutely incorporate metrics. Like, I don't think that the metrics part goes away in this, but I always believe in metrics. I don't think metrics should be ignored in a traditional video game either, right? The magic, as I mentioned earlier, happens when the team collaborates and there's synergy between the business realities and the metrics collected in the testing and the creative vision for the product. And so I think what we're going to see as we sort of enter out or exit our infancy in social games is more of that, I hope, middle ground, that synergy between the metrics and the business realities and really strong passions and creative ideas that hark back to what I hope will never change, which is a strong belief in the quality of the game. Studios that believe in the magic of teams, of setting vision, and of really committing to delighting the consumer through fun, quality, interactive play experience.